Hey Megamaniacs, this week on the Retro Hunting Adventures, we're going to go through this seemingly random stack of games after these introductory words from MegaRan.
Yo, this is MegaManFan, and you need to rock and or roll on over to Mr. MegaManFan's YouTube channel, because it's all that rush to make it happen. Peace!
As seen in the opening footage, we're starting out this week with Momotaro Densetsu, which roughly translates to Peach Boy Legend, and this is a game that sold over 1 million copies in Japan, which is probably why I was able to get a loose copy of it for just $1 US. Now, there is also a Momotaro Densetsu anime, but it's set in outer space, and this is definitely not. The story of Momotaro comes from Japanese folklore and is actually pretty well illustrated in this opening cutscene. He's born from a giant peach that was found floating down a river by an old childless woman who was washing her clothes. She and her husband are about to eat the peach, and Momotaro bursts out of it, and they adopt the boy and raise him as their own. So what we have here is Momotaro's Legends in video game form, adapted first to the Famicom by Hudson Soft, and then turned into a franchise that had many different ports to many different consoles. PC Engine, Game Boy, Super Famicom, PlayStation, Sharp X68000. They built quite a series on this Japanese folklore tale, and there's been rumors over the years that someone would bring it back once Hudson Soft was absorbed into Konami, but nothing has come of it since that time. This seems like pretty standard RPG fare. You've got a world map and villages that you travel to, and once you're in those villages, you talk to the shopkeepers, you talk to the residents, you acquire items, you rest and heal up, you make your way through the world, gaining levels and experience and money that you need for items as you go. With an English language patch, I could probably get into this quite a bit. Unfortunately, without one, it's a little bit random what I'm doing or who I'm talking to or what I'm even gaining from the experiences that I'm having. This next one is also an RPG, and even though it's set in outer space and it is in Japanese as well, it's much more straightforward and easy to follow. This is called Earthfighter Reiza, and it was developed by Enix in 1985 for personal computers, and then ported to Famicom in 1987 and given the subtitle Ginga no Sanin. The music for the Famicom port was done by a famous Japanese composer named Yukihiro Takahashi, and there have been arranged versions of the soundtrack released on CD, played by a full orchestra. So you can guess the quality of the music within this game and the reception it's had over the years. The plot involves the human race colonizing outer space in the 24th century, but as one would expect, drama ensues when they do that, and aliens from the outer reaches of the universe come and attack Earth, eventually conquering it and forcing all available units to retreat until there's only one unit left on Mars. That's where we begin. You're making your journey back to Earth and defeating the enemies along the way. If this was a traditional RPG and you were wandering from village to village and getting enemy random encounters along the way, it would feel exactly the same as this. You're just in outer space instead. When you defeat the enemies that you random encounter, you're gaining experience and points that you can use to upgrade items, which would be the same as leveling up and getting gold in a standard role-playing game. With an English language patch, I can see myself getting very invested in Earthfighter. It's got a charm, not just the music, not just the graphics, but the overall presentation is fun. And even though it's all in Japanese, I was able to muddle my way through it pretty effectively, as you can see from the gameplay footage, because it's turn-based. They attack you, you attack them. If you've played any RPG before, you can probably muddle your way through it too, but I think an English language patch would really enhance this game for me. So I'm going to go out looking for one, and if I can find it, I will be playing much more of this game going forward. Some of you may know Custom Robo Battle Revolution from Nintendo GameCube, but did you know there were 3 games before that exclusive to Japan? This is the very first game, Custom Robo, on Nintendo 64. The plot is pretty simple. On your birthday, you get a custom Robo named Ray. You go off to find opponents to battle with Ray and get parts to customize him and become a Robo Master. If this is reminding you of Robot Wars, I don't blame you because that's the first thing I thought of as well, but that's aimed at a more adult audience, and the Custom Robo series is definitely aimed at a younger audience. The game's designers even stated that was their goal when they launched this series to begin with. And the thing that astounds me about it is that this would be so easy to translate to a US audience, and they didn't until the 4th game in the series. What kid in the US wouldn't enjoy just as much as any kid in Japan getting into a battle arena, fighting other robots, and customizing those robots to get better and win more battles? Now that I think about it, that seems like a premise for all ages, not just children. They may have intended it that way with the cute design and cute sound effects that are definitely skewing in that demographic, but I think the concept would appeal to a gamer of any age, regardless of country, regardless of language, so it's just astounding that they never even tried. I think this could have been a huge hit for Nintendo 64 if it had come out in the United States back in the day, but it did not, and I picked this one up really cheap, $1, so I suspect it was a huge hit and a big seller in Japan, but it never got ported here. I picked up Monopoly for Super Nintendo because the copy I found had a pretty nice label and the price was reasonable, right at or about the price charting average, and when I got it, they were having a buy 2 get the 3rd free sale, so I got 2 Super Nintendo games and a PlayStation 4 game for $12. Thought that was a pretty good deal, but when I actually played this version of Monopoly, I was a little surprised that the graphics for a Super Nintendo game look more like an 8-bit NES game. I thought I was mistaken at first. I thought, well, I should compare the cartridge to what I'm playing on the emulator, make sure they're the same, and yes, they are. I didn't download the wrong version. This is how it looks, even though it's a 16-bit game. It seems very crudely animated. The fonts even look like they're from an 8-bit NES game. If I didn't know better, I would think they just ported one directly to the other and didn't make any structural improvements other than maybe adding a few sound effects. But this isn't necessarily a must-have title. It's probably a decent enough one if you're not playing against computer opponents, but it's kind of dull if you're playing it all by yourself. There's none of the additional bells and whistles of a modern Monopoly video game. Speaking of bells and whistles, Jack Nicklaus Golf. I got it again for the nice label, but there's not a lot to write home about in this particular Super Nintendo port of a very successful golf franchise that appeared on many computers and probably many different consoles too, but this port definitely reminds me of playing it on Commodore 64 or IBM PC computers, whichever one it was back in the day, because it works almost exactly the same way, including the fact that it renders the graphics very slowly. It draws in the playfield a little bit at a time, and then it pops up the trees that are on either side of your fairway one at a time. It's tedious. And I know for computers we accepted there were some limitations in rendering and graphics power in the 1980s and early 90s, but somehow with console games you expected more than that. After all, consoles could faithfully reproduce many high-quality arcade games, so why did Jack Nicklaus Golf have to be so slow? I have no idea. But for a much faster console game, let's turn to Sega Rally on the Sega Saturn. which I happily imported from Japan because Sega Rally Championship goes for about $10 there and about $30 here. So $20 saved means more games for me, and it's the exact same game. It's even got menus in English, so there's very little that you need to translate here. And if you've got the RAM cart that allows you to play imports, which I would think most Sega Saturn owners have at this point, if you're into retro gaming, you can play any Japanese import you want with no restrictions. The Sega Rally series started out in arcades, but I think it became just as popular and successful, if not more so, on home consoles. I mean, just look up the term Sega Rally and you can find dozens of different platforms the various arcade games got ported to. Not just Sega Saturn, but Game Boy Advance, Dreamcast, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, the list goes on and on. Even the Nokia N-Gage got a version, although why you would play it on that, I have no idea. It's also stupidly rare. I've seen it go for $250, so I'm glad I don't have a Nokia N-Gage or try to collect for that because I don't want to spend that kind of money on one game. Sega Rally Championship is absolutely worth $10 though. It's a fun, straightforward racing game with some very nice visual graphics. Not too much distance fog. Saturn didn't really need that, unlike some N64 games. My only complaint would be it's a little loosey-goosey on the turns, and it's easy to spin out of control if you don't drift into them or slow down quite a bit, but I think I can get used to that over time, and I expect that I will, because it's already fun to play just for the purpose of this video, so I will be coming back to it. Next, we have a Wii Motion Plus remote, which I've never actually owned before, and I picked up one in black so that it would match my Wii U Deluxe Edition that I bought on basically not launch date, but not too long after, because I did get into that exclusive, you get some games free and you get a discount on your future purchases in the eShop that came with early adopters of the Wii U. But I definitely didn't want the white model because it came with a very limited amount of memory, so I opted for the black system. Now I have a black Wii Motion Plus remote to match it, and this enables me to play Wii Sports Club because it requires a Wii Motion Plus remote. So you either have to have one with the Wii Motion Plus built in, or you have to have the adapter that you can put on the end of a regular Wiimote and upgrade it to a Wii Motion Plus. I'm just playing the 100-pin bowling game to test it out, make sure that the motion control is working the way it's supposed to, and I can say that I'm satisfied. It feels right, it's playing right. I can't get 100 though. I'm trying like heck, but the closest I could get to knocking down all 100 pins was 97, even when I changed my aim and went as close to my natural throwing motion as possible, because I tend to curve it a little bit to the left when I throw. So if I tend to aim just a little bit to the right, I can get it between the lead pin and the pin to the right of it in a domino fashion, toppling them all over. And that usually works for 10-pin bowling, but 100-pin bowling, it's really hard to get every single one to knock into each other with the physics involved. So I gave it my best effort, but 97 was the best I could do for the purpose of testing the Wii Motion Plus. So I'm going to move on. This is the other game I got when I went to Trade Post and they had buy two, get one free. I had to delete a crap ton of stuff from my PlayStation 4 because it had a 20 gig install that came with this game. Most of it copied off the disc. It was only like a gig download update to bring it up to current specs, but it took forever. In fact, I was testing the Wii Motion Plus on Wii Sports Club while it was doing this in the background. I had one running while the other was running, so I was able to maximize my time and make the most of this game. And I think this is one that is going to require a very lengthy sit down. This is not one that I can accurately review because I couldn't even skip through the cutscenes. It told me it's still loading the game in the background, so you gotta watch the rest of this cutscene while it loads. Great, fantastic. That's not what I signed up for, but that's modern games for you. Unlike retro games, you're not going to get into the action right away in a lot of cases, so you'll learn to live with it. But Killzone Shadowfall comes from a very big franchise of Killzone video games, so this one was big enough that they actually made it a launch title with the PlayStation 4. And since I didn't get my PlayStation 4 at launch, I'm late to this game. But also that means it's been printed in numerous quantities and it's not hard to get a copy cheap like I just did. They had a whole row of these when I went to the game store. There wasn't just one, there was like 12 of them. So if you like first-person games where you're having to use stealth and shooting and work your way through difficult situations, I'm sure Killzone would be right up your alley. I don't know whose alley Your Shape with Jenna McCarthy would be up, but it's not up mine because I got this one from a bargain bin at a half-price books and quickly found out why it was in the bargain bin. I remember Jenny McCarthy from a show on MTV where she used to kick the butts of single men, and this one kicks my butt because I can't play it without a USB camera. It instantly informs me that it's unplugged and I must plug it in to continue. And it turns out that Your Shape with Jenna McCarthy actually came bundled with the camera. I looked through the manual and sure enough, there it is. Using the USB camera included with your game. Great, so I can't even play this. I spent $3 for nothing, but you'll live and you'll learn. Maybe I'll get a camera somewhere cheap someday, but for now, we're going to leave this edition of the Retro Hunting Adventures and say, see you in another 7 days, and as always, thank you for watching.